Winds of Andalusia. Part 1. The Arrival. The sun hung low over the olive fields of Andalusia, casting golden hues across the vast landscape. The hills rolled like waves under a sky painted in the richest blue, and cicadas played their quiet summer symphony. The warm air carried the scent of rosemary, dust, and something more elusive, something old like longing. It was here, far from the roaring crowds and flashing lights, that Johnny Depp had come to disappear. Not permanently, but for a while. He had rented a secluded estate in the countryside outside of Seville, tucked between vineyards and almond groves, with a centuries-old villa shaded by towering pines. No paparazzi. No expectations. Just him, his guitars, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, he could remember who he was when no one was watching. On his second day, he met her. Her name was Isabella Duarte. She was the villa's caretaker, though she hardly looked the part. With her thick chestnut curls, sun-kissed skin, and deep, intelligent eyes, she moved through the ancient halls like she belonged to them. She wore linen and leather, and the scent of orange blossoms followed her wherever she went. He had just come down for coffee, barefoot and groggy from a long night of playing music on the terrace, when he saw her adjusting a cracked shutter. "I didn't mean to wake you," she said in perfect English, her accent lilting and warm. "You didn't," he replied, rubbing his eyes. "I wasn't sleeping. Just pretending." She smiled slightly, not intrusively curious but gently amused. "You're not the first artist to come here pretending to sleep." Johnny tilted his head. "Is that what I am? Still an artist?" Isabella's eyes met his without hesitation. "That's not for me to say. But the olive trees don't lie. If you play music near them, they either lean in, or they turn away." He laughed at that. A real laugh. The first in weeks. Part 2. The Conversations. Over the days that followed, Johnny and Isabella settled into a rhythm. She would tend to the villa, bringing in flowers from the garden or organizing old books in the library. He would write music on the terrace, or sketch in a leather-bound notebook, always barefoot, always quiet. They spoke in fragments, mornings, sometimes late at night, when the heat drove them both outside. She never asked for autographs. She never even mentioned his movies. Instead, she talked about the stars, about flamenco, about her grandmother who had danced in the festivals of Córdoba with wild dark eyes and a tambourine. He listened, and he began to feel something shift. One evening, under a canopy of fairy lights he had strung up between the olive trees, Johnny offered her a glass of wine. They sat together on mismatched chairs, listening to old Spanish guitar from a dusty record player. "Do you miss the city?" she asked. "No," he said. "I miss time. The kind I had before everything. Before fame. Before I became someone else. Or many someone else's." Isabella looked at him carefully. "I think you're still in there." He took a sip of wine. "Sometimes I wonder if there's anything left that's real." She stood, walked barefoot across the grass, and stopped in front of him. "This is real," she said, touching her chest, then his. And this moment." For a long second they looked at each other. Not actor and admirer. Not star and stranger. Just two people in the slow rhythm of Andalusian twilight. "I haven't written a love song in years," he whispered. "Then write one now," she said. Part 3. The Music Returns. In the following days, the villa filled with sound. Johnny played like a man possessed. Not by ghosts of the past, but by something vibrant and alive. His fingers moved over guitar strings like they were made of silk and lightning. Isabella watched from the garden sometimes, pruning roses while melodies floated through the windows. He didn't write about her. Not at first, but she was in every note, every pause, every breath he took between chords. One night, when a summer storm threatened the edge of the valley, he came to her room with a candle in hand. "I think I finished it," he said. "The song." He nodded. "Play it for me." He sat on the floor at her feet and played, eyes closed. The music spoke of rain and sunlight, and things that cannot be undone but may still be forgiven. When it ended, he looked up at her. She didn't say anything. She leaned down and kissed him. And the storm rolled over the hills unnoticed. Part 4. The Secret Garden. Days passed like dreams. The Andalusian summer deepened, ripening figs and softening even the hardest memories. Johnny and Isabella settled into something that felt real. Not fragile like infatuation, Not loud like obsession but something deeper. Rooted. Like olive trees. They spoke less, touched more. Fingers grazing shoulders. A palm brushing a cheek. Words became secondary to silence shared under starlight. But peace is never permanent. One afternoon, Johnny received a call from Los Angeles. His next film, already delayed, was back on. The producer was panicking. The director wanted rewrites. The media had found out about his retreat and were circling. He put down the phone and stared at the vineyard beyond the terrace. Isabella appeared with 2 glasses of iced tea. Her eyes scanned his face before she spoke. "They've found you, haven't they?" He nodded. "They always do. Will you go?" "I don't know." She sat beside him. "It's okay if you do. You're not meant to hide forever." "I wasn't hiding," he said. "I was healing." She smiled. "Then maybe you're ready." He didn't answer. Not then. Part 5. A night in Seville. That weekend, they drove into Seville for the first time together. He wore a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses, but nobody seemed to notice. Or perhaps they did, and chose not to care. In the labyrinth of narrow streets and tiled courtyards, they were just another couple slipping through the shadows. They danced to street flamenco in Plaza de España, ate grilled octopus with lemon, and laughed until their sides ached. It was the most alive Johnny had felt in years. As night fell, they walked along the Guadalquivir River, hand in hand. She wore a red scarf around her neck, and he couldn't stop looking at her. "I wish I met you earlier," he said. She stopped, the river lights glinting in her eyes. "I wouldn't have been ready." "Neither would I." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small notebook. "This is for you." She took it gently. Inside were pages filled with songs. Unfinished, scribbled, chaotic but beautiful. "You wrote all this?" "Because of you," he said. "Not about you. Because of you." She kissed him again, slower this time, with the weight of knowing what came next. Part 6. The farewell morning. The morning of his departure came too fast. The air felt heavier. Even the birds were quieter, as if nature itself knew how difficult goodbye could be. They didn't speak much. She helped him pack. He strummed his guitar once, then set it aside. Finally, he turned to her in the doorway. "Come with me." Isabella looked up, her eyes brimming but steady. "I can't." "Why not?" "Because this place, it's part of me. Just like the road is part of you." He reached for her hand. "I don't want to leave you." "You're not," she whispered. "You're carrying me in every song." There were no tears. Just silence. And then a kiss so soft it felt like a promise. Part 7. The letter. Weeks later in Los Angeles, Johnny stood in his studio, staring at a canvas he couldn't finish. The city buzzed outside. Scripts waited on the table. But his heart remained somewhere else. That's when the letter arrived. It was handwritten, the paper smelling faintly of rosemary and citrus. "Johnny, I saw the first autumn leaves today. The olive trees miss you. I miss you too, but not with pain. With gratitude. You reminded me that love is not always meant to be held. Sometimes it is meant to be remembered. But if you ever return, the shutters are fixed and the guitar is waiting. Isabella." He folded the letter and placed it inside his notebook of songs. Then he picked up his guitar and began to play again. Part 8. The return. A full year had passed. Autumn came to Andalusia with ochre winds and whispering leaves. The olive trees stood tall but still, as though waiting for someone who hadn't yet returned. Until one crisp October morning, a black car pulled into the long dirt road leading to the villa. The birds stirred. Dust rose. And Johnny Depp stepped out, suitcase in one hand, guitar slung across his back. He stood still for a moment, breathing the air as though it could heal every inch of his soul. But something felt different. The garden had grown wilder, untamed. The shutters, once freshly painted, now flaked slightly with sun. He stepped onto the porch and knocked gently. There was no answer. He knocked again. Then the door opened. It wasn't Isabella. A young man stood there, no older than 20. He had dark eyes and wore a puzzled expression. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Isabella Duarte," Johnny said carefully. The young man's face softened. "You must be Mr. Depp." Johnny nodded, unsure whether to feel comfort or dread. "I'm Mateo. Her nephew." A pause. She's in the hospital. Part 9. The Room of Silence. The hospital in Seville was clean and quiet, smelling faintly of antiseptic and chamomile tea. Isabella lay in a room filled with flowers, white lilies, lavender, olive branches. Her hair was thinner, her skin paler, but her eyes still had that endless calm. She smiled when she saw him. "I hoped you would come," she whispered. He knelt beside her, speechless. "I didn't want you to know," she said. "I wanted you to remember me in sunlight." "I would have come sooner," Johnny said, voice shaking. "You came now. That's all that matters." He reached for her hand. She gripped it weakly, her fingers like parchment paper but still warm. "What happened?" he asked. She sighed. "Cancer. Quick and quiet. I didn't fight it hard. I didn't want to." "Why not?" he whispered. Her gaze turned toward the window. "Because I already lived the life I wanted. I found beauty. I found you." He lowered his head. "But we had so little time." She smiled. "Some people never find love at all. We found it even for a moment." Part 10. The last song. He stayed with her that night, sleeping on the chair beside her bed, her hand in his. In the morning she was weaker. "Play something," she said, voice barely audible. He brought out his guitar, old, worn, familiar. He played softly. No lyrics. Just music. And she closed her eyes. As he played, nurses came and went, silent as shadows. Her breathing slowed, then stopped. His fingers kept moving long after she was gone. The nurses gave him time. When they returned, Johnny had placed his guitar beside her. On her chest, he left a folded note. "You are the song I will never stop playing. J.D." Part 11. The Villa Reborn. 6 months later, the villa came alive again. Johnny had bought the estate. Not for nostalgia, but for rebirth. He restored the garden, painted the shutters himself, set up an open-air amphitheater beneath the olive trees. And on the anniversary of Isabella's death, he held a concert. No tickets. No stage lights. Just locals, artists, flamenco dancers, and musicians from around the world. They gathered to play songs of loss, of joy, of love. In the center of the courtyard stood a bronze sculpture. A woman with wild curls and open arms, her dress flowing like flame. He named it the Muse. That night, under stars too bright to ignore, Johnny stood with his guitar and spoke for the first time in public since his return. "She changed me," he said. "She reminded me that the realest things in life are quiet, simple, soft." Then he played. And every olive tree leaned in. Part 12. Ever after. Years passed. Johnny stayed in Andalusia most of the time, though he still traveled, still acted, still played. But the villa remained his anchor. He opened a small artist retreat in Isabella's name, inviting young creators from around the world to come and find their own muse. He taught, listened, and sometimes, on warm summer nights, he would tell the story of a woman who never asked for anything, and gave everything. And in his final album, released without promotion, was one track simply titled, Isabella. No lyrics. Just 5 minutes of pure, aching melody. When asked about it in his last interview, Johnny smiled. "I wrote many love songs in my life," he said. "But only one came from love itself." The end.